They told you it was a gift. Society conditioned you to believe that being an empath, feeling the pain of everyone in the room, is a superpower, a sign of your moral superiority. But this is a devastating lie. Your hypersensitivity is not a divine gift. It is an open, bleeding wound. It is a profound psychological vulnerability, and out there in the dark, predators do not admire your bleeding heart. They actively hunt it. You already know the cost of this so-called gift. You live the cyclical nightmare of the emotional sponge. You absorb the chaos, the unspoken rage, the neurotic panic of people who do not actually care about you. And if you do not close this door, tomorrow you will wake up exactly as exhausted as today. You will continue to carry a crushing anxiety that does not belong to you, slowly and irreversibly burning out your own nervous system. But it does not have to be your permanent reality. It is time to learn the psychological alchemy of Carl Jung, the critical transition from merely feeling to precisely seeing. By the end of this journey, you will learn how to build an impenetrable glass wall in your mind. You will master the ability to read the darkest motives of manipulators with terrifying precision, while remaining completely and utterly untouched by their poison. The engine of your car is turned off, but you cannot bring yourself to step outside. You just spent an agonizing hour listening to a friend detail their latest manufactured crisis. They feel fantastic now. They vented, they dumped their psychological trash, and they walked away lighter. But you feel physically ill. Your chest is tight. Your breathing is shallow. You are suffocating in an emotion you did not create. Let me tell you right now, this exhaustion is not your fault. What you are experiencing in that dark, quiet car is known as affective empathy. It is the unconscious, automatic mirroring of another person's emotional state. You are not simply understanding their pain on an intellectual level. Your brain is literally forcing your body to simulate their trauma. You are physically downloading their psychological chaos directly into your own nervous system, paying the price for a debt you never incurred. Carl Jung, the pioneer of deep analytical psychology, warned us about the terrifying danger of psychological contagion. When your internal boundaries are porous, you become infected by the unintegrated chaos of the collective. You lose the absolute crucial distinction between where your identity ends and their neurosis begins. The border dissolves, and when the border dissolves, your sovereign territory is violently invaded by their shadow. We need to completely dismantle the illusion that absorbing this toxicity is a noble sacrifice. It is not martyrdom. It is a severe, structural vulnerability in your psyche. Emotional vampires and clinical manipulators do not look for strong, heavily guarded opponents. They are parasites, and parasites look for open doors. Your unguarded, bleeding empathy is the exact door they confidently walk through, wiping their feet on your sanity. They use your profound capacity for compassion as a weapon against you. They sense your deep-seated terror of being perceived as cold or unfeeling, and they exploit it relentlessly. This is how the parasite operates. It latches onto your nervous system, forcing you to process the shame and anxiety that they are far too weak to metabolize themselves. You become their emotional landfill, convinced that you are performing an act of love. You give them everything, and in return, you are left completely hollowed out, staring blankly through the windshield, dreading the moment your phone inevitably rings again. The dynamic is fundamentally broken, and your body is sounding a desperate alarm. It forces us to confront the darkest paradox of your psychological wiring. Why does your extraordinary ability to understand others feel exactly like being slowly poisoned to death? The poison does not just stay in the car. It follows you into the fluorescent glare of the open-plan office. You sit at your desk, the hum of the monitors pressing against your skull, and then the air in the room suddenly changes. Your director storms in. They are radiating a frantic, manic panic over a trivial deadline. You did not cause this crisis, but instantly your own heart rate spikes. A heavy, familiar dread settles in your stomach. We will examine this through the archetype of Liam. Liam is a corporate team lead, but right now his title is utterly meaningless. He has become a biological sponge. Without a single word spoken to him directly, Liam begins to frantically type, taking on extra work he does not have time for. He is desperately trying to lower the temperature in the room. He will sacrifice his own peace and his sleep tonight solely to soothe the erratic anxiety of an incompetent superior. You watch him do this, or perhaps you do it yourself, every single day. And we must ask a brutal question. Why do you rush into the fire to extinguish a blaze you did not start? What terrified child inside you decided that you are personally responsible for the weather in every room you enter? You call it being a team player or being highly empathetic. But deep down, you feel a suppressed, acidic resentment gnawing at your chest. This desperate need to absorb and manage the emotional state of others is not a personality trait. It is a deeply ingrained survival script. It is an archaic adaptation to a chaotic early environment, forged in a time when you were completely powerless. You learned very early on that if you could perfectly anticipate the mood swings of volatile adults, if you could soothe the monster's anger before it erupted, you might just survive the day unharmed. But you carried that frightened child's strategy directly into the adult world. In Jungian psychology, this creates a dangerous, suffocating identification with the persona of the fixer, or the martyr. You have built a psychological mask so thick that it is suffocating your true self. You mistakenly believe that your fundamental value as a human being is tied entirely to your utility, to your ability to endlessly process the emotional garbage of the people around you. When you wear the mask of the fixer, you strip yourself of all internal sovereignty. You become a prisoner to the darkest moods of the collective. If the office is tense, you are tense. If your partner is angry, you are guilty. You have convinced yourself that, by anticipating their needs, you are maintaining control over a volatile environment. But this is the ultimate cognitive distortion. You are not controlling the room. The room is entirely controlling you. Look closely at Liam as he rushes to regulate his director's childish panic. He is not actually helping. In clinical terms, he is engaging in profound psychological enabling. By acting as the emotional shock absorber, Liam is actively preventing this incompetent leader from colliding with reality. He is shielding the abuser from facing the natural, destructive consequences of their own unintegrated shadow. Every time you absorb someone else's anxiety, you rob them of the opportunity to grow, while simultaneously destroying your own nervous system. You are acting as a human shield for someone else's dysfunction. And the exhaustion you feel at the end of the day, that bone-deep, paralyzing fatigue, is the heavy toll exacted by a psyche that is desperately trying to uphold a lie. The lie that their chaos is your absolute responsibility. The lie that their chaos is your absolute responsibility does not just exist in the fluorescent glare of the corporate office. It follows you everywhere. It bleeds into your most intimate spaces, rooting itself deeply in the tangled web of family dynamics. We leave Liam at his desk and find Chloe trapped in her car outside a brightly lit grocery store. The engine is off, but her nervous system is in overdrive. Chloe has the phone pressed hard against her ear. On the other end, her mother is weaving a masterful, tearful narrative of victimhood. There are no direct accusations, only a heavy, implicit blame for her mother's lifelong unhappiness. Chloe feels a physical wave of suffocating guilt compress her chest. Her throat tightens. She truly believes that she must absorb this pain, that she must physically suffer just to prove she is a good daughter. But look closely at this dynamic. If you have ever been caught in this agonizing loop, you know the deep frustration of trying to solve their problem, only to be met with more tears and anger. Which brings us to a terrifying paradox you must confront. Why does the manipulator actively resist your solutions? Why do they need you to feel their pain far more intensely than they actually want to heal it? The answer lies in a dark mechanism of the human psyche, known clinically as projective identification. The manipulator is not calling you for advice, and they are certainly not seeking a resolution. They are calling to evacuate their own psyche. The mother cannot tolerate the profound, gaping emptiness and shame within herself. It is simply too painful for her fragile ego to acknowledge. So instead of processing her own trauma, she projects that unbearable feeling directly into Chloe. This is not a metaphor. It is a psychological hijacking. She unconsciously forces her daughter to carry the psychic weight she refuses to bear herself. When your boundaries are down, the manipulator literally transplants their anxiety into your body, making you feel the shame that rightly belongs to them. When Chloe inevitably absorbs this massive projection, when her voice finally cracks and she apologizes for a sin she never committed, she provides the abuser with narcissistic supply. The mother feeds on this reaction. It is a twisted form of validation. Her distorted reality is confirmed precisely because she can hear the devastating impact it is having on her daughter's fragile, empathetic state. Your distress is the exact mirror they desperately need to look into. They inflict the wound, and then they use your bleeding to prove that they exist, that they are the ultimate victim. It is a predatory cycle that farms your emotional response to keep their own unintegrated ego from collapsing entirely. And you, trapped in the quiet of your car, are being consumed to fuel their delusion. This is the terrifying reality of emotional hijacking. If you recognize this dynamic, if you have ever felt your own identity dissolving under the weight of someone else's manufactured guilt, hit the like button right now. It helps us know we are digging in the right direction. To ensure you do not miss the path out of this maze, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments whose pain you have been carrying. To break free from this parasitic grip, you must radically reprogram your understanding of compassion. You have been heavily conditioned since childhood to believe that turning a blind eye to a parent's tears or refusing to absorb a partner's rage is an act of unforgivable cruelty. You think that by pulling away, you are becoming the monster they loudly claim you are. But you must hear this clearly. Refusing to feel their pain is not an act of malice. It is an absolute necessity. Detaching your nervous system from their projection is the refusal to be an active accomplice in their lifelong delusion. You cannot heal them by bleeding with them. True sovereignty begins the moment you realize that their unhealed wounds are not your cross to bear. Armed with this understanding of how your nervous system is hijacked, let us return to the fluorescent glare of the corporate office. The director storms into Liam's workspace once again, radiating that familiar manic panic. The same aggressive projective identification that we saw with Chloe is happening right here, right now, over a manufactured deadline. But this time, something in Liam is profoundly different. He watches the director pace, frantically waving their hands and raising their voice. But Liam's heart rate does not spike. His chest does not tighten. Instead of the usual suffocating anxiety, he feels a strange, unfamiliar sensation creeping into his bones. It is a cold, heavy stillness. He clearly sees the invisible strings of the manipulation trying to attach to his psyche, but he simply refuses to dance. This quiet rebellion forces us to answer a critical question. How exactly do you build a psychological glass wall in your mind? How do you achieve this state of absolute sovereignty, where you can look the monster dead in the eyes, map every terrifying detail of its neurosis, and yet completely prevent it from touching you? It feels impossible to the lifelong martyr, but this is the ultimate act of internal alchemy. What you are witnessing in Liam is the monumental shift from affective empathy to cognitive empathy. You are no longer unconsciously mirroring the chaos of the room. You deliberately retain your high-level intelligence, maintaining the ability to read the micro-expressions, the underlying fears, and the true motives of the abuser standing in front of you. But you ruthlessly and permanently sever the emotional cord. You become the detached observer. Cognitive empathy allows you to look down at the maze of the manipulator's broken psyche and accurately trace every single twist and turn of their trauma. You understand exactly why they are throwing this tantrum, but crucially, you map the maze from above without ever stepping foot inside it. You see the fire, but you refuse to offer yourself as the fuel to keep it burning. This profound shift does not happen through positive thinking or repeating gentle affirmations. It requires the conscious, deliberate integration of your Jungian shadow. You must finally acknowledge the dark, aggressive aspects of your own psyche that you have spent a lifetime repressing. You must give yourself the psychological permission to be something society explicitly tells you never to be. You have to grant yourself the absolute right to be cold, clinical, and utterly unbothered by the dramatic suffering of someone who is actively trying to exploit you. Your shadow is not an evil force. It is your ultimate psychological boundary. When you integrate it, you unlock the masculine capacity for ruthless detachment. You stop being the eternal bleeding heart and finally become the guardian of your own energy. Back in the office, the director is escalating, waiting for Liam to step in, apologize, and absorb the panic. But Liam just sits there, his eyes calm and unreadable. He offers no soothing words. He provides no emotional mirroring. He simply reflects the chaotic energy back into the room without accepting a single drop of it. And in that precise moment of silent refusal, a terrifying psychological reversal occurs. By completely blocking the psychological transfer, Liam forces a phenomenon that Carl Jung called enantiodromia, the sudden emergence of the unconscious opposite. The director's aggressive projection is meant to land safely in Liam's nervous system. But because Liam has raised the glass wall of cognitive empathy, that massive toxic energy has absolutely nowhere to go. It hits a solid, impenetrable surface. Since the parasite cannot feed on the host, the chaotic energy bounces violently back onto the sender. Without Liam acting as the emotional shock absorber, the incompetent leader is suddenly forced to confront the devastating reality of their own unmanaged trauma. They are left entirely alone in the room, suffocating in the very same anxiety they desperately tried to weaponize against an innocent target. This is the staggering power of the detached observer. By consciously choosing to see without feeling, you do not just protect yourself from the poison. You force the manipulator to drink the venom they poured specifically for you. The glass wall holds firm, and your nervous system remains entirely your own. You have stopped being a vulnerable emotional sponge and have forged an unbreakable, sovereign shield. The unbreakable, sovereign shield forged by Liam in the office is not just a passive defense. It is an active, living boundary that transforms your entire reality. Let us leave the silence of that boardroom and return to the cramped, tense atmosphere of Chloe's car. The engine is still off. The phone is still pressed to her ear. Her mother is still weeping, weaving the same masterful, tearful narrative of victimhood. But the atmosphere has radically changed. Chloe is no longer suffocating. Her chest is not tight, and her breath is entirely her own. She listens to the frantic words pouring through the speaker, but she is analyzing the structure of the guilt trip like a seasoned detective reviewing physical evidence. She feels a mild, clinical curiosity instead of paralyzing dread. Which leads us to a profound, inevitable question. What happens to the parasite when it finally realizes the host is no longer bleeding? You are witnessing the precise moment of Jungian individuation. This is the profound psychological process of differentiating your true self from the chaotic, devouring demands of the collective. Chloe has finally realized that her own nervous system is a sovereign, heavily guarded territory. Access to this inner citadel must be earned through mutual respect. It can no longer be violently demanded by someone leveraging familial guilt. The mother pauses, expecting the usual frantic apologies and desperate attempts to soothe her manufactured pain. Instead, Chloe takes a slow, deep breath and speaks a single, devastatingly calm sentence. "I hear that you are upset." The silence that follows on the other end of the line is deafening. This is not just a polite response. It is the conscious deployment of the mirror of truth. By stating, "I hear that you are upset," rather than collapsing into, "I am so sorry," Chloe acknowledges the objective reality of the situation without accepting a single drop of the projected blame. She reflects the image perfectly, but the emotional cord remains permanently severed. In doing so, she absolutely starves the manipulator of the narcissistic supply they so desperately need to sustain their victim narrative. When you first implement this level of cognitive empathy in your own life, you must brace yourself for the immediate fallout. Deprived of their emotional fuel, the abuser will inevitably escalate. They will lash out, accusing you of becoming incredibly cruel, heartless, or fundamentally broken. They will weaponize your new boundaries, claiming that you no longer care about their suffering. When these accusations inevitably come, you must not waver. You must not let the old, familiar guilt creep back into your chest. This aggressive escalation is not a sign of your failure. It is the absolute, undeniable proof that the glass wall you have built is working perfectly. The parasite is simply thrashing because the feeding tube has been permanently cut, and your energy is finally yours again. The line goes dead. You lower the phone and sit in the exact same car where this journey began, bathed in the amber glow of the streetlights. But the atmosphere has fundamentally shifted. The suffocating weight in your chest is gone. Your breathing is deep, steady, and entirely your own. For the first time in years, you are completely alone in your own body. The energy coursing through your veins has not been siphoned off by a parasite. It belongs exclusively to you. Chloe's triumph is no longer just a case study. It is the blueprint for your own psychological survival. You have finally realized that true compassion is not a knee-jerk biological reflex, but a highly conscious choice. We must answer our final, terrifying question. Why is the ability to look at someone else's suffering and deliberately choose not to feel it the ultimate act of self-preservation? Because you cannot pull anyone from the drowning waters if you let them drag you under. This psychological glass wall you have constructed is not a prison that isolates you from humanity. It is an impenetrable fortress that guarantees your internal sovereignty. By consciously integrating your cold, observing shadow, you have stopped running from your own capacity for detachment. You have taken a profound vulnerability, your unguarded empathy, and successfully transmuted it into the ultimate tactical radar. You now see the darkest motives of the psyche with absolute clarity. You are no longer an emotional sponge left out in the rain to absorb the neuroses of a deeply broken world. The era of sacrificing your own sanity to temporarily regulate the emotional temperature of a toxic room is officially over. You have become the sole architect of your internal peace. You possess the alchemical ability to walk directly through the chaotic fires of manipulation and conflict, perfectly mapping the danger, without letting a single ounce of the smoke into your lungs. This transformation must be sealed in reality, not just left as a fleeting thought. I want you to solidify this new psychological boundary right now. Go down into the comments and type these exact words as an active manifestation of your newfound sovereignty. My empathy is a tool, not a trap. My energy belongs to me. Let this be your personal declaration of independence, a permanent marker of the exact moment you stopped bleeding for those who only came to watch you suffer. The world will continue to test your borders, but the gates are now locked. You survived the exhaustion, integrated the darkness, and reclaimed your mind. The heavy burden of saving everyone was an illusion you were finally permitted to drop. You made it out of the maze. You are alive. Your boundaries are forged in steel, and that is absolutely enough. Stay sovereign, and until next time, guard your energy with your life.